Have you ever created a learning program you knew wouldn't make a difference, but you did it anyway? Maybe you were responding to a stakeholder request, a colleague request, or maybe you were just trying to keep your boss happy. Whatever it is, we've all been there. But in this episode, we're calling time on the activity trap. We are breaking down the people impact loop to help you do less guessing, more aligning, and actually prove that you're driving business value. If your function's running hot but delivering cold, this episode is your wake-up call. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Marketing for Learning podcast. It's series 2. We are back. Ash is back, as you just heard her woohoo. Anyone that's been following us for the last few months knows that it's been a bit of a crazy time. And maybe the gap between series 1 and series 2 has been a little bit longer than we hoped. But that's all right. Life happens and we are back. So this series is all about the people impact loop in a really practical and tangible way for you all. So we're not talking in theory. We've got some phenomenal guests on this series to really help you bring your people function to life. And today we really want to talk about how to kind of spot a broken loop, because Ash and I have had a few conversations offline, and it's quite easy for us all to think, yeah, we're doing a great job. We do everything perfectly. Or, like we just said to each other, actually the polar opposite, and you can be pretty harsh on yourself. So, given we've had a nice long break, and I think it's been a number of months since we released the People Impact Loop podcast, do you want to start this podcast, Ash, with a bit of an overview of what the People Impact Loop is?
Yeah, sure. I'll try and rummage through my pudding-like brain and see.
I was about to say, you literally look like you hate me right now.
No, it's fine. I just, my brain no worky. No, I'm only kidding. It's fine. So the People Impact Loop was essentially created by me. But the main reason was because we work with a lot of different customers across geographical reach, across size, employee size, and across industry as well. And many of the same issues persist across all of them. We see the same things emerge time and time again from our research and the discovery phase that we always do when we engage with clients on large strategic projects. And what I really started to get quite frustrated with is there's very little way for us to drive impact as learning functions. That's because some of the way that we work with the organization and some of the way that the organization expects us to work with them puts us in a really difficult place where we're not really able to make strategic choices and have strategic impact because we're stuck chasing our tails, dealing with stakeholder requests, doing the compliance stuff. That's like BAU, that's keeping the lights on. It's not strategic. You're not going to get any insights from that. But then you've got a board asking for insights and impact. So it feels sometimes, I think, us as people functions feel like we're set up for failure, not because of a lack of passion or capability or competency, but actually from where I was stood, at least when I was building the People Impact Loop, there is a fundamental issue with the way we work and the way that we do things and how we arrive at building learning experiences or employee experiences and everything from there. So the People Impact Loop is 5 essential stages, and the idea is that this then feeds into itself in a really iterative loop and continues to do that for all perpetuity. So stage 1 is always starting everything we do with research. Doing really strong audience research, talking to our employees. What do you need and what do you want? What are your expectations from my function? How can I service you? What's going on culturally in the organization? How much change are they experiencing? How much firefighting are they doing? How tired are they? Where do they feel they can prioritize what it is that we're trying to do here? Yeah. But on top of that, you also need to talk to the business. You need to talk to the stakeholders that are sending you endless requests. You need to talk to your C-suite. What are you expecting from us? If you're giving us £1 million budget, what do you want back from that? That's really important. We can't do much without insights. Otherwise, it's just the blind leading the blind. Once we've got our insights, we can really effectively align with the organization. And that's not to say that you should just chuck out all your soft skills training that we can't really measure, but we know like communication skills are really important, especially in the age of AI. We don't want to lose those skills, but we should be looking to align with the business, especially on areas where we're going to have significant spend, where there's going to be scrutiny, where we know we're looking to deliver impact from this. We should be aligning with the business as much as possible, because otherwise, what's the point? We're here to service the business. The function exists to help the business succeed, and we do that by helping our people be the best they can be. So if we're not aligned with the business, it kind of makes all of our efforts rather redundant. From there, we can then build out more effective employee experiences, our products. We know that actually, using our research, that's going to be more aligned with what the audience wants and needs. Well, formats might be appropriate depending on the audience, where they are in the world. Our translation's necessary. Simple stuff too, right? It doesn't have to always just be these big, spectacular things, but it's actually more effectively meeting people's needs whilst taking into consideration that business alignment piece. Those two things do have to exist together, even if sometimes they're at war with one another. And that is where learning strategy comes in. And then from there, obviously, we need to do really strong marketing and make people aware that this stuff exists. We know that it's not enough to just send a single email. If you guys, if you've listened to this podcast for the over 100 episodes that we've created, it don't work. So we need to have consistent multi-channel marketing campaigns that touch multi-points, multi-times in order to really embed anything. And if you just want someone to go and do a program, you got to do that. Never mind a culture change piece. And then the final piece is, again, you've had all that insights and data. You know very clearly what it is you're measuring, where we can get impact. So you get those insights and you're able to do two things, which is more effectively report to your board and C-suite in terms of what it is that you're doing and what results that's driving. But you're also then, two more points actually. You can also feed those insights further back into the loop in terms of refining your products further, and again improving your marketing capacity and capability with regards to what you've learned from that effort. But then also you can say no more. Saying yes to everything is causing us a lot of issues. In a bid to be perceived as useful and helpful, we actually get ourselves in a bit of a pickle because we're doing stuff that's not strategic. It's not aligned to the business. It's not aligned to what the people want. It's actually just some stakeholder who's gone, I need an e-learning on this. And it's, we don't need it. You've got all that data. You can say, look, this is what's working and this is why it's working because I did all this research and it's aligned with the business and I can say no to you now and feel a bit more happy about it.
Yeah. So and it also gives us the ability to say no in the sense of actually that's not what our people need and that's not where we need to be, but also no, they don't need an e-learning course. They need a PDF support guide. Like it just really empowers us, People Impact Loop, to say we're the experts here and we've done the work. And I think, listening to you there, Ash, it can sound like it's a lot of work, but it's not. It's doing the things we're already doing, but in the right order and actually using it to fuel the loop. Like it is a never-ending loop, and all too often I see, particularly L&D teams, with the thinking about the audience of this podcast, we do a lot of stuff, we put a lot of energy in, we do a lot of work, and then we kind of forget about it. We move on to the next project, move on to the next thing that we're focusing on, and we don't carry that research forward with us. So I think it's really important. We're not really reinventing the wheel here. We're just putting the wheel in the right order and making it that continuous cycle, that never-ending loop. The People Impact Loop is a loop for a reason. It's meant to keep fueling the next thing.
And I think as well, there's two things at play in... Do you know what? I think it happens in every function. It's not exclusive to people functions, but I certainly have had to do the same thing when I worked in-house in marketing. You've got to strike a balance, at least initially, whilst you're doing this stuff, between placating, like maintaining the status quo and placating what's going on, keeping the lights on, BAU, I'm going to do that bit, but I'm going to maybe focus on our next strategic project where we know we're going to invest a bit of money. Try using the People Impact Loop. Try doing some research before you create the product, before you go buy some technology, before you get tied into a vendor for 3 years for something. Do some research. Just because Glenn, who works in finance, not Stephen today.
What a rogue name.
I don't know. asked for something, doesn't mean that we've got to do it. And it doesn't mean that that's the strategic thing that's going to help the business achieve its goals. So I think we need to be real with ourselves that this isn't a case of we can just say stop to everybody. Stop doing what you're doing. We're going to do something different, because you almost need proof of concept as well. Yeah. So, I would strongly suggest that you pilot the idea and the framework of a people impact loop on a small piece of work, but maybe something that's quite scrutinized or is going to have a lot of eyeballs on it, because you're still going to have to tread water for a bit and do what you're already doing, but you still got to prioritize maybe shifting the tides and doing something different, because we know the way we currently work isn't really delivering the outputs that are wanted by the business, which is why, in my opinion, we're seeing a significant shift internally in organizations. And I forecasted this about 2 years ago. I've said it on the podcast loads. People functions are becoming, L&D, talent, HR, they're all becoming people functions. Yeah. Because the business is struggling to understand what role the likes of L&D sits, especially L&D. HR, but we got to do the policies, and we got to do that stuff. And talent's like, you need someone to recruit new staff for you, so we got to do that. What is L&D's easy to see is redundant. Yeah. So, people have lost their jobs. There's a lot of restructuring that I've seen. And I think if we want to be valuable, this is your quote, by the way, then if we want to be seen as value, we've got to create the value first, right?
Yeah. We can't just keep begging for someone to realise that we're special. We need to actually go out and do the work.
By the way, sorry for quoting you to you. That was
quite fun. I quite enjoyed it.
It struck the ego. My email signature.
Oh, I've missed you, Ash. So when we're if we're thinking, putting ourselves in the audience's shoes, and they're sitting here thinking okay, how do I know what I'm doing wrong? How can they identify the bit of their people impact loop that is broken? Because fundamentally we already have this. We've already been doing bits and bobs of it. How do they know what's their weak point and what's their downfall?
I guess if you're not starting with data, it's all like a house of cards from there, in my opinion. I think we miss out step 1 and 2 in people functions a lot. So we don't do research and we don't align with the business. We just we jump straight into the product piece. And that's because we've been told to do, we got to have a new X, Y, or Z in, or, the people need this, or let's validate that, So I think we omit 1 and 2. We were quite, I would say, the busy making of these functions is very much around 3, the product employee experience creation. Yeah. That's our hub and our hubbub and the bubble of what we live in. So then we're pretty much missing out 4 and 5 as well. We're not doing much in the way of marketing and campaigns, and we're certainly not measuring and iterating. So we could talk to each stage, or, how do you want to kind of go about it?
Well, I also think there's a big telltale sign if your people impact loop's broken, and it can also uncover where people think they're doing a really good job, and I hate to say it, but you're not. If the business is still questioning you about what have you done, what impact are you bringing, if you can't clearly articulate how you've impacted the business bottom line, if you can't prove the literal demonstrable impact you've had on the business, something's broken. Whether you think you've done enough research or not, you've not aligned with the business. You've not gone out and spoken to your audience. You've not aligned with the business goals. You haven't thought about your audience in the experience design. You haven't marketed it properly, and you're not testing and evaluating if people are still asking questions. Because if you're following the people impact loop properly, it's really easy to demonstrate that impact, because you're thinking about, what are we going to measure before you've even built the product?
Yep.
Where does this align to the business? What KPIs are we looking at? You're looking at that before you dive in head first. So it's much easier to ask those questions. If you're still feeling like, oh no, the CEO asked me what impact and I can only tell him that there was 7,000 hours of learning last month, your people impact is broken. You need to start thinking beyond that. So I think almost if people are listening to this and thinking, I still struggle with that proving the impact. Your impact loop's broken. We need to sit down and go through each step and really understand where it is, but there is a hole in it somewhere.
Yeah, ultimately, to my mind, you can simmer all that down into one very simple question, which is, what's our purpose? And if our purpose is to just have some stuff that people occasionally use, that question's gonna be floating around in the real decision makers' minds. If your budgets are getting shrunk, that's a pretty telltale sign that the business doesn't want to invest in you. Mm-hmm. So, I think that we need to also be real with the fact that I do think some of it is produced by the business and some of it we do ourselves, but there's a lot of busy making tasks that we do in L&D in particular, but across the board in people functions that aren't going to ever impact that business bottom line or those business goals. But then why are we doing it?
We're obsessed with outputs. Whether that's the output of, I don't know, a well-being day or a new training program or, everyone's talking about AI, so, we need to do an AI day in the office. Like, that's just stuff. We're really obsessed with just the stuff to show that we're doing something rather than taking that step back. And I think that's the difference when you're following the people impact loop. It forces you to take that step back because you're talking to your audience, you're aligning with the business and you're going, oh, okay, like the stuff doesn't matter so much. That's actually step number 3. And we've still got 2 steps after that. It's one and small cog. Yeah, exactly. So we need to step back and actually like go, okay, like there is a bigger picture here. And we need to look at it. We need to make sure that we are actively making sure we're aligned to the business, not just jumping on the next bandwagon. And again, it's not just an L&D problem, it's a people problem as well. We like to show face, and I get it. And look, like you said, like we've both been there as internal marketers. It was easier to get, like, on this podcast, everyone would have heard of learning technologies. It was lovely, weren't it, Ash? After putting in all that work to make that big shiny stand, that everyone's like, well done, Hannah. It was a great show. Well done, Ashley. It was brilliant. And that was such a buzz. We've both been quite vocal with the fact that there's not a huge amount of ROI on those kind of events. No. That's not actually impacting with business bottom line. So I get why the accolade part of doing stuff and focusing on the outputs gives people a boost, but that's not where we need to be if we really want to drive the business forward. And people aren't in people functions just for a jolly. We're here because we want to help people. We want to help businesses. We want to drive the business forward. And I think that's a really important piece that, like, actually, if you align better with the people impact loop, you're going to feel more fulfilled in the long run because you can actually see the demonstrable impact that you're having on the business.
Yeah, it's not a lack of passion or competency that these things are fundamentally broken. It is just the way that the business forces us to work a lot of the time, or at least did, and now we're just kind of stuck in that pattern of work. So again, it's really for us to break that pattern. Otherwise, we're going to actively participate in exercises of futility, and we know that they're not going to do anything. I bet every single person listening has at least built one piece of e-learning or a program or something that has been asked for by the business, knowing that it's not going to do anything and it's not worth the effort.
Absolutely. I'm sure absolutely everybody listening to this can think of one.
So who's going to be held culpable? Is it going to be the stakeholder that asked for it? No. It's going to be you because you're the one that produced it. So if there's a massive investment in it, we have to ask these questions. We need to ask, why do we want to make this? Let's go back to our research. You can do that body of research and use it many, many times. You don't have to do the research every single time. You got new things that people are kind of going to try and get you to create. Once you have a learning strategy in place that is built around the people impact loop, you have a much stronger ability to just go, it's not part of the strategy.
Yeah.
Sorry, we've got X, Y, and Z that can do this, or I can help you create, I can facilitate and enable you to create something, but the thing for me, Derek Mitchell, the conversation I had with him, so one thing really just stuck with me that we don't need to measure everything, right? The business doesn't want to know how many modules you have on your LXP and how many hours or minutes people spent on it. Where they want to know is, what are you doing with the money we gave you? And where is that,
What's
giving
coming
us
back?
impact? But if the business has been quite clear where its direction of travel is, you can then align your strategy to that and ensure that the bigger investments and the places that are going to get scrutiny are aligned, have strong KPIs, and are business focused. So, of course, there's stuff that will float around the periphery of that isn't getting a huge amount of investment, and the business probably isn't going to care whether it's there or not.
Yeah.
Maybe your employees will, again, up for debate depending on your research. So, to my mind, if we really want to be seen as and respected for what we do well, which is large, we're great at our jobs. But it's not being seen because it's missing the mark.
And I think a big part of that comes to talking the business's language as well. It's that second step of aligning to the business, because you tell a CFO, I don't know, let's say 100 hours were spent learning last week. The CFO is just got to be seeing that as wasted productivity and wasted hours, and we'll be seeing the pound signs next to it rather than the impact that will have. We have to start talking the business language if we really want people to care about what we're doing. Yes, of course, hours spent learning, completion rates, all of that gives us an indication, but it's not the full picture. That tells us one tiny bit of the picture. We need to fill in the gaps following that to make sure that we're saying this is the impact that's having. Sure, you still need the completion rate in your LMS. I'm not saying that LMS vendors should rip up what they're doing, but we need to continue that story with the research, with the feedback loop, with making sure we're actually crafting experiences that actually work.
Yeah, because otherwise, surely the ultimate aim is to help people be better at their jobs. So, improve their performance, change behaviors. These are the two things we probably really want to affect with any employee experience, right? Even if that's the rollout of a new HRIS system should help improve productivity because of X, Y, and Z. People still need to know how to use it. You still need to educate them in some way. So, I just get to the point where I kind of think I just don't understand how we think that those type of metrics matter, because they don't really prove that anything happened besides someone undertaking a task. That's it. Someone did this. Okay, so what? Put the so what test on it. It doesn't go very far. You can't, there's not a lot of definitive answers within those sort of data sets. They're very shallow. And again, if you're really looking at trying to get more weight behind you as a function, persuade to get more budget or whatever, you need compelling data to say, look, we did take X people offline for 2 whole days to go to this training session, but the aim of this was to do X, Y, and Z. We wanted to decrease time off calls by 20%, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then you can measure that because you've identified the goals from the outset. You've identified pain points for the business. Learning and training is crucial to helping productivity and keeping morale up and helping people navigate and manage change as well. So, these are crucial things. We play a vital role in the organization, but we are not positioned right now as vital.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we think about the whole impact loop, you need to review yourself step by step, right? You need to know if you're aligned to each step of the people impact loop. So if we think about that initial piece of the research, how will someone be able to identify a broken loop at that stage where they're falling short? What kind of things should they be asking themselves? Because saying go and do the research, obviously somebody could send out one survey and think they've ticked that box, but we'd quickly tell them that that's not enough.
I would say kind of what I've already said around, like, if the data sets are quite shallow. So if you're just getting people who log into the LMS or this type of person, or, their job titles make them want to have this type of training, you need that mix of qualitative and quantitative data. We've talked about that at length. You need to hear from the horse's mouth a lot. To really understand exactly what's going on. I think there is a genuine detachment, even though we're employees ourselves. the lived experience of our people is often quite different to people functions lived experience, because we're kind of bought into the culture more, and like, you know, we're like a bit more sworn in somehow into the business. A lot of people just are so overworked and burnt out and change fatigued. We need to understand all of that first. So if the types of data that you have is a few responses from the survey, or one of my personal highlights is the employee engagement survey, and just take some stats out of that. Mm-hmm. Again, that can be really supplementary, but we still need
but it's not
to
enough.
talk to our people. Yeah. And we need to talk to a broad spectrum of people, and a good number of them too, right?
And a really good mix as well. Don't just go for the people that love your function, love learning, that kind of thing. We need to make sure we're talking to everybody. And actually, I was at the CIPD Festival of Work last week, and in one of the sessions, somebody went on quite a bit of a rant, basically saying, like, poll surveys are great, but don't ignore the long answer questions at the end. That's when you're going to get the real gold dust. And it's like what you just said there. Hear it from the horse's mouth. Understand what is actually going on. What's the reality of their life? Because we're great at assuming that everyone's doing what we want them to do, doing what we're doing. And that's just not the case. So we need to make sure that we're actually really hyper aware of what the reality is. And it's only then that we can align ourselves with a business.
Yeah, and can I just add one final thing to that? I think it's really important that we are very mindful of our confirmation bias, and we aren't just asking questions that we want the answers to. We are asking questions that are very open and objective and have space for grey and nuance. So yes, no, not very helpful. Again, like, some interesting insights can come from yes, no questions. But we want to live in the grey. We want to get to know that area. So I think we have to be very, very mindful of getting out of our own echo chamber with this as well, because we need those objective questions and we need good subjective answers back, right?
Yeah. And also not taking things, I don't know if I want to word it like this, but not taking things completely at face value. So a project I've just finished, people were saying, I don't have the time. But when we dug deeper, it was actually a massive tech problem. Like, people didn't have the time to deal with the technology. They didn't have the time to leave their day job to try to find an hour to find the one thing they're looking for. So when you just say people don't have the time, it's a real people problem. Actually, the problem was internal. They really did need to sort out that tech problem. So when we're getting feedback repeatedly, ask those follow-on questions, ask those whys, ask those open-ended questions that let people explain what they actually mean, rather than just saying, what's your biggest challenge? Time, tick.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't tell us enough of the story, does it?
No, absolutely. And we've got to dig deeper than that, because everybody says time, and it's not
the easy
untrue.
answer.
Yeah, and it's not untrue. I think as well, like, there is a lived perception by a lot of people that they just don't have time to prioritize that. But that's also a branding issue, a perception issue. Like, people don't know a lot about what we actually have to offer. There's a huge, big crevasse between what's available and what people know they can have access to. That's, again, relatively common across the board. So, you know, these are things, it isn't just about gathering some data. It's ensuring that this data is meaningful and intentional and purposefully cultivated to help you better understand, for better or worse, the culture of the organization, the perceptions of your function, and the lived experience of the people that sit in it, because that's your market. That's what you're building products for. That's what you're doing marketing to. This is information that you need in order to do every other step well.
Yeah, absolutely. And thinking about that business alignment piece, how, this is such a rhetorical question because I could go on a rant about this, but how are they going to know if they're not aligned to the business?
Are any of us really?
No,
I mean,
exactly.
I think there's a good few. I can think of a couple of people that have built or rebuilt functions to be purely commercially focused, so they don't do it unless there's a business KPI around it. End of.
Yeah. And I think for me, one of the biggest like warning signs or like obvious points on this where you're not aligned to the business, if you can't tell me what the business goals are. And too many L&Ders can't do that. And too many people functions can't do that. If you don't know where the business is going, you're not aligned to it. Because if you were, you'd know where they were going.
Yeah.
It's like
and
pretty
I also
obvious,
think as
isn't
well, if you're still in that order taker dynamic where you're basically treated as a service center. So you're a center of excellence for creating learning. But people come to you to ask you to create stuff, and therefore you're not strategic at all because you're just constantly passively producing what's being requested. So I would say if you're in that sort of dynamic, you're definitely not aligned to the business because the business is forcing you to be something else. But again, it's up for you to buck that trend. And I think as well, if the sorts of data sets that you have is again around learning hours and completions, attendance, smile sheets, bums on seats, la-di-da-di-da, we know the business doesn't care about any of that. So, like you said, tell your C-suite, like, oh, hold on. Yeah. How does, okay, you took everyone out for 2 days. Was that good use of their time? Or,
then what? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So again, if our goal, yes, has to be impacting performance, changing behavior, if we can't measure those two things and prove that to the business, then we're not aligned to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably out of the 5 steps, the one that I could hazard a guess that most people aren't aligned to the business goals and the business strategy. And I think it's probably the most obvious one. You know in your heart, you might lie to yourself, but you know that you're not aligned to the business goals. And like you said, there are a few examples where we know people are, but on the whole, people functions aren't thinking about the wider business goal. So it's quite an obvious change.
But it should, again, this doesn't mean that every single thing you do, again, like I know functions that do, everything has to have a commercial or KPI to it, fine. But it depends on what your vision is. But I do think if you need to, if you just even say, okay, 100% of our effort, it isn't going to go on just achieving business goals, but we need to make sure at least 65% of it is. So, okay, the business is planning on releasing new products next year, and therefore we need to have a massive upskill on this. How can we measure that people are learning what we're teaching them? Because that's an essential thing that they're going to need to know. So it doesn't have to be every single thing, and not everything needs to be measured, I don't think.
Yeah. I think I'd also challenge that, though, because I think everything we do can impact the business. It just might not be the business priority. So, for example, if you've got a marketing team that, is going around in circles because they can't actually make a decision, and they're going back and forth and they're having meetings upon meetings because they can't agree on a campaign concept, actually those soft skill trainings, things like communications, working better in a team, being a better leader, would then influence their KPIs because they'd be making those decisions quicker. They'll be getting out of the door quicker. They'd be having less meetings. They'd be more productive. And that in turn would have an impact on the business bottom line. I think I agree with you completely. We don't need to measure everything. But I think everything we do in people functions does have that impact. Maybe it's not the business's top priority right now, but it should still have an influence on helping the business and the organisation move towards where it needs to be, even if you're solving the problems that the C-suite don't even realise you have.
I think the word potential is what I think of, right? So, I think these functions have the potential to be highly impactful. The truth of the matter is we can't take it all on at once. So when I did the people impact loop, we need to start aligning with the business. So, again, if you, in a dream world, you're at a board meeting and it's like, all right, update from head of people, VP of people, whatever. And you kind of go in and say, well, lots of people learned new soft skills and communications improved, and I can give you this statistic, but the business is all focused on some fucking change management thing. It goes back to what you were saying. You still need to translate that into
how it's a business
what the business is trying to achieve. You've got to make it easy for them to understand what it is that you're doing and how that helps them achieve their goals. That's what, for me, that's the important bit. And so obviously if you're picking business agendas for the year and aligning key learning initiatives to those, that's a really strong start. And then other things that you have, you should still be identifying KPIs that prove impact, prove performance change, prove changes in behavior, because that just makes your learning function or people function better and more evidenced, right? So it's kind of two sides of the same story, but in different ways. I think it's easier to align with the big strategic pieces, even though that takes longer probably. But that's where we can speak the language, and that's where we can really clearly align with, okay, the business is going in this direction. This is how we help as a learning function or a people function to get there. This is what we're going to do to help you get there. It's just absolutely. A different narrative, isn't it?
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's so important that we work out what that narrative should be when we're having those conversations if we want to be getting that seat at the table. I hate that saying, but we need to work out what it is that matters to the business. But actually everything we're doing should be nudging us forward. We'll just might cherry pick what we're actually talking about. Earlier on in this podcast, we mentioned about the employee experience design, learning experience design, whatever it is for the person listening. And we said, actually, this is where L&D put a lot of their effort, and people functions do as well. We focus a lot on this one element of the people impact loop. I think a lot of people will be shocked at how much their loop is broken at this point, because we think we're doing the right things, but because we haven't done steps 1 and 2, there's massive gaps in step 3 with the experience design. So obviously when you're thinking about where your loop is broken at this point, you want to be thinking about like how you're operating and how you're designing things. So are you just doing e-learning because that's easy for you? You've got a storyline license and it's a quick thing for you. Or are you actually thinking about the employee at the end of it? Are you personalizing the learning experience where possible? Are you testing? Are you getting the minimum viable product out there and seeing what works and what doesn't? I think as much as we spend a lot of our attention in people functions at this experience design piece, I actually think it's pretty flawed, and most loops would be quite broken around this point as well.
Oh yeah, but again, it's because at least phase 1 in particular completely overlooked.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, everything from there is broken if we don't get the data piece, because we're building on assumptions and requests. So, if we think about there's a difficulty here, because the business will still make you do some things, right? Oh, IT said that we need a new HRIS system. I just use that example again. You don't really have a huge amount of say in that. You might be able to get involved in procurement, maybe, but ultimately you're going to probably inherit this thing that then you're expected to own and roll out, and it might be crap, it might be sensational, it probably is going to be somewhere in between, let's be honest. Yeah. But you can still do more with that you've been given. If you have your research, you can maybe improve the user journeys that sit across it. You can map out what people's experience was with the old one. That might give you some insights into how you can position your marketing, that it's you're relieving pain points. When we have that data, it can help us even improve the products that we already have, right? So again, that journey, that employee experience, what comes out time and time again, people don't know where to go, don't know what to do. There's too much. I hear that all the time. So curation then, please, right? Curate experiences for these people. This is, you can have a lot of stuff that you don't really like and you can't get rid of because you're tied into it. Cool. Do they need to see it then?
Yeah.
Is there a better way for us to really apply our learning hats and think, okay, this is what I know about my audience. This is what they're struggling with. Right, what can I do with what I've already got to improve that? You can't necessarily throw the baby out with the bathwater. You can't chuck it all out and start anew. You're lucky if you can, but most people have a lot of legacy in their functions, and we have to appreciate and accept that that's part of life. But we can ring fence stuff. We can partition the experience away from the things that are distracting or causing problems. Remove the friction where possible. So again, without the data, we're building based on our lovely assumptions or requests from stakeholders, and sometimes also get forced where the business is going this direction. Like, hey, the business has made a decision to implement Copilot. Cool! What does that mean?
Yeah.
So I think there's kind of two sides of that. Again, it's like, I feel like the people impact loop for many is very aspirational. And they just like, I just don't know. We've got to ground ourselves in the reality of where we are and the small incremental steps we can take to create change and boost value over time. This isn't like you do this tomorrow over everything, because that would take forever.
Yeah.
We got to start small here.
And I love that you said frictionless. I think that's a bit of a theme of this series. I think our objective is that at all stages of our operation as a people function, it should be frictionless, and we should be striving to remove that friction. But once we've got the experience down and we've actually built it based upon our research and our data and not just our gut hunches? I've just merged two sayings there.
I like it. Let's call it gut hunch.
Punches.
Or a hunch.
We've obviously got to come on to the bit that we both love the most because we're marketers, but that actual marketing and campaigns piece. I don't think I know any L&D team that I've ever worked with where their loop isn't broken at the marketing piece.
Yeah.
Because of the just huge misconception about what marketing really is, if we're honest.
And what it takes to really do it well, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the key point of we can't do just a little bit. We've got to do quite a lot. So what should people be looking at and thinking about to make sure that their marketing or their campaigns element of the people impact loop isn't broken?
Okay. So I can say this quite simply. If you want campaigns to be effective, so if you want your marketing to be effective, right, you need to do campaigns. Now, a campaign is a campaign, like a politician's campaign to get the next presidency or whatever. It doesn't last a day or a week. This is a long-term approach to instigating action in audiences, and the
building a
politician analogy
relationship.
works. Yes, yeah, building trust. The politician example is actually a really great one because it's called a campaign, but they're trying to get people to vote for them. So what do? They go on the telly and they do debates. They go to different towns across across America to go and influence people face to face, shake hands, kiss babies. I don't think you're allowed to do that anymore. Be a politician, smile for photos and be in selfies, so on and so forth. Pamphlets and banners, and you'll have digital ads online. You might have a social media presence. What was the name of the lady that went up against Trump in the last presidency? I can't remember her name.
Kamala Harris.
That's it. So she had a massive TikTok effort. So she was trying to capture smaller audiences, younger audiences. So she did tons of stuff on TikTok and had like a big video strategy as part of her campaign.
Yeah.
The point is, we don't do that in L&D and in people functions. We arrive late to the game. We get given a thing. We have 2 weeks to get it ready. We don't really think about this piece at all. So if we do, we cobble together a few little bits. We have a little lunch. We have some, branded cupcakes.
I'm about to say a few cupcakes.
Yeah, don't forget the cupcakes. Look, I'm not beating up cupcakes because I got time for them.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm always happy to be given a cupcake.
Yeah. So I think, to my mind, we need to think more about, again, the audience that we're trying to reach. And we can't do that without our research. But also, we need to really be real with the fact that if we are trying to change behaviors, whether that is getting someone to go on a program or trying to re-engage apathetic audiences or the ultimate build a learning organization and a learning culture, these things take time, and so should your campaign. So if you're sending one-off emails to promote things, like we said before, people still have very much a kind of programmatic type marketing effort. So I see a lot where there is emails being sent and things happening, but it's kind of much like the products piece that we talked about. Like, just because it's busy work doesn't mean it's valuable. And so, again, is the email we're sending, have you thought about the subject line? Is anyone even going to open it? What happens when they open it? Are they even going to read it because you've written it in 50,000 words and it's the longest email man ever knew? so on and so forth. So again, we need to put our audience at the heart of this. And unless we're going to build based on assumptions, which is flawed, we need to have the data. So it does all boil back to the data, and we can't do that step. And then I'll say one more thing, and then I'm done. I'm ranting. On top of that, if we haven't built our products well, then no amount of really clever, great marketing is going to overcome the fact that the experience with the products is still poor. So we can do killer campaigns and do everything I've just described, where it's consistent and multi-channel, multi-touch, la-di-da-di-da-di-da, multimedia. So that's what all that hype was about. This is it. Like, ugh, no, I'm not.
That actually would do more damage.
Yes, 100%.
Because they'll be so disappointed when they get there.
Overpromise and underdeliver is not a scenario anybody wants to be in.
Right.
We can't, these things have to come in order. And again, a lot of the people Impact Loop was built on frustration because we were being brought in late to the game.
Far too late.
With all of this established stuff already in place and, again, inherently flawed. And so, we have massive issues with engagement. Like, marketing will fix it. I don't think it will if the product isn't right. You know, I don't know any shit products on the market that still sell.
It just doesn't work like that, does it?
No. So,
do want to build on something you said there about how campaigns need to span a period of time and we need to have the time to build up that engagement. On one of the many webinars I did last week, somebody asked the question. Honestly, it was ridiculous. How did I do 3 in 1 week? I'm bad at planning.
You're
clearly
superhuman.
All my own fault as well. Anyways, I digress. Somebody said but if it's only a 1 hour training course, why would I need to invest all of that time? Firstly, that goes back to if you're just churning out stuff that you're like, it's just a 1 hour training course and it has no business impact. That's your problem, not the marketing. But actually, and the example I use to kind of push back and make them think about it, a movie on Netflix that is an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if it's a really long one. They don't go, okay, well, I'm just going to invest 1 hour's worth of marketing into this because it's only an hour movie. That shouldn't actually influence your decision. If you're thinking about the impact that thing can have and the impact it can have on the business, if it's a 1 hour training course, but it's actually going to influence people to go and do something differently. Maybe they're going to change their performance. Maybe they're going to work harder. Maybe they're going to acquire a new skill. That's what we should be equating the amount of marketing effort on, not, it's only a 1 hour training course. That's the wrong mindset. And as soon as somebody said it, I was like, oh my God, is this how people are thinking in L&D? Because please stop. That's not what we should be doing. So I just want to make sure if anyone's listening to this and thinking the same, I don't need to do a long campaign for something really small. If that thing that's really small is going to have a really substantial business impact, yes, you do. It's as simple as that.
And also, zooming out even further as well, if you look at those single experiences as gateway drugs to your broader offering, right? So Netflix, if we continue with that, they want to get people on the platform. They want people to want to watch that thing so they then subscribe. And then they then watch other stuff and get enjoyment out of that. So the idea is to get them there, for them to have a positive experience with that thing they really wanted, and then build continuous interaction with them. So algorithmic surfacing of content that's recommended, blah, 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 whatever. So, and constantly refreshing what's being available and keeping it interesting for, short attention spans. We have to think that way. People need to have a good experience. Otherwise, they won't go back. So, we've lost them. There is going to be no repeat business. There is going to be no repeat visits. They've been scalded and they're not interested in going back. So it is important. Even these little things feed in to the brand perception and the tacit brand experience that sits within every single one of your people.
Yeah. And again, talking about Festival of Work last week, they were talking about employee experience as a whole, but they said, think about your employees as subscribers, and it's your job to make them want to stay subscribed, because ultimately any of us can leave our job at any point. Yep. We can just leave. We can opt out of that subscription. And I thought that was a really nice way of thinking about it. I often tell people to think of their audience as consumers, but actually thinking of them as subscribers and wanting to keep them month on month on month so they don't cancel that subscription, I just thought it was a really nice way of thinking about how we need to handle, market to, and design for, and speak to, and understand our audiences as subscribers, wanting them to come back time and time and time again.
Yeah. As long as we don't conflate that notion that they're subscribers, so they're already very invested in your product. That's not the case.
No.
So you've got to convince them to become subscribers, and then you got to maintain them.
And then want them to stay subscribed. Exactly. Like this morning, I cancelled my Deliveroo Premium subscription because I was like, I'm not actually getting the worth out of this. They've not actually done anything to make me want to keep that. They've just assumed, oh, she's subscribed now, so woohoo, she's going to keep paying. I think it's like £7 a month. No, I don't need that. Goodbye. And I deleted it. Like, we need to kind of assume that everyone's in that mindset of, like, I'm unsubscribing at this point and keep winning them over. We've spoken for a long while, but we've got one last step of the people impact loop to kind of diagnose, for somebody to sit and listen to this and think, okay, this is a weak point for me. And that's that measure and impact and boost in value bit. And of course, it comes back to the data again, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, again, the starting point should be, why are we creating this? What's the purpose of it? Do we have any way to measure anything? We need to be linking to business outcomes. So if we're still, again, if you prescribe to Kirkpatrick, which, mixed views on whether you should follow that model or not, most of us are kind of in the second tier. We can measure that people did stuff. Yeah. We need to start going beyond that. And that's because of the cycle that we've described, right? We're stuck in the doing stuff because we're forced to do stuff for people that have asked for it. We have no way of measuring it because we're not in control of the creation process. So how are we going to influence and be able to say, oh, well, Bob over there asked for that, but actually this is going to really, really improve X, Y, or Z. Probably not. So it's not based on anything. So I think the key is, again, lining up with that data and ensuring, if you've done it right, then stage 2 will ensure that, the data that you capture is the right type of data and is directly aligned to proving business value. Yeah. Completions don't prove business value. Yes, with compliance, you can maybe draw a correlation between minimized risk, but it's mostly a bum covering exercise. Risks are minimized by the business. We're not going to get sued for not ensuring we're compliant. Mm-hmm. A lot of the other stuff, you can't just say, oh, well, people did it and they liked it. That's really nice, but that doesn't mean anything, And again, they don't always have to love every piece of learning as long as there's something valuable that comes out of it, right? So some of the most painful learning experiences I've ever had have been some of the most beneficial. So,
yeah. And I think for me, a really great way of knowing that your loop is broken is if you get to this point and you're trying to work out, oh, what do I measure? Because you should have defined that up front. So if you're getting to this point and going, oh, I don't know what data to look at, your loop's broken.
Yeah.
You should know that up front of what's the KPIs, what's the things I'm looking for to know when I get to that point. Has it worked? What do I need to improve? And actually, I've already recorded it. It's one of the episodes in this series. I think it might be 4 or 5. But we had Nelson from How Now on, and we go into a lot of depth about this piece. And he's got a really nifty 3-step framework of proof of knowledge, proof of skill, and proof of performance. And I think it's so, so abundantly clear that you need to define those up front. And then this step of the people impact loop should be really, really easy. You should just know what you need to look at this point. And if you don't, it's broken.
Absolutely. We're setting ourselves up for failure by not doing this stuff, by not, really getting the data, aligning with the business, building experiences that are more aligned to what people want and need, marketing it well, and then measuring the impact of it all and proving to, C-suite that this has worked. It's done what we said it would. Give us more money and maybe some more people and some more stuff. We can't do any of that. We're not armed with any any real arsenal, or we haven't got any ability to have gumption and push back, and we're not seen as like functions with gravitas, are we? Because
No.
we're not stepping up and really kind of owning the narrative and taking control of our function. Like, you've hired me to do this job, let me do it.
Yeah.
This is what we're gonna do.
I think it's having that gumption, that confidence behind us, just to say, you know what, actually, I can do this. And I think every area of the people functions are feeling the same. And we've got this obsession. We're talking about getting a seat at the table. And you've already quoted me back at me today. But, like, we've actually got to do the work to get there. We can't just keep throwing our toys out the pram and saying, but I want a seat at that table. Actually, we've got to do the work. And I think, okay, we've gone through all the ways that people impact loops are broken in organisations today. And I think I've already said it once today, but we're not saying that our intentions aren't in the right place. We're not saying people functions are terrible at their jobs. We've just got to do that bit of graft to actually get everything in the right order and actually fuel that so that the rest of the business starts singing where we're at, right?
Yeah. Here's a good analogy. So my husband has started going to the gym, but he's not a gym goer. He's always done like martial arts and is more of a kind of like, we'll jog outside kind of thing. Hates the gym really, but he goes because he wants to improve his physical health. Good for him. I'm really proud of him for doing that. But he's a bit out of his depth, right? So he'll come home and he'll be like, what did you do? And he's like, oh, well, I just kind of do the same things. I just kind of bimble about because I'm not really like very confident in using the machines. And I said to him, you should see a PT, or I can send you some specific routines to do, because if you're putting the effort in to go, you're going to invest in an hour or so of your day to go and do that, then you want the maximum output of that effort, right? So if what you're doing now is only getting 50% output, but if you change the way you train, it might turn into 100 or 90 or whatever. 100's aspirational, but you get my point.
Yeah.
The exact same thing applies to what we're discussing here. We're doing a lot of stuff. We're exhausted. We're burnt out. We're busy as fuck. But a lot of it isn't leading to impact and value. And that's because the loop is broken. And that's because we've been doing the same thing for a really long time. This is how we've always done it. This is the way we work. It isn't working. We need to really restructure how we create experiences in our functions. And this is a foolproof framework to help with that. It is that simple. You don't need me and Hannah to do it for you. You can do it yourself. But the mentality behind it, taking ownership, having the ability to have pushback, having strong strategic intent within the organization and alignment is crucial. Then you can have good products and do good marketing. Cool. But if we don't have that piece, everything we do is lots of activity, very little impact. And that is disheartening and upsetting and frustrating. And, I've worked in jobs where my CEO changes the objectives and moves the goalposts every 4 to 6 months. Oh, we're doing this now. Oh, I've got a new product coming out.
Haven't we all been there?
Indeed. And you know what happens? You're so focused on change management all the time that you're never able to build output. And so then it looks like your business, your function isn't doing anything valuable because you're so busy chasing your tail trying to do all the other things that they've made you do. You need to step back. And like I said, what I used to do was like, all right, I'll do some things that I think are going to like keep you happy. Like, we need leads. Fine, I'll do a webinar and I'll give you some email addresses or whatever. But I'm going to do all my SEO stuff and my inbound stuff that I know works, but it's long term. So I'm doing both. I'm keeping the people happy, but I'm also putting some work in underneath the surface to really help me shift my function over time and also give me the ability to go, look, I've been doing this behind the scenes and this is the impact it's having. It hasn't affected my output for you, but I want to start doing less of what you're asking for because, look, this ain't doing shit. And this is actually getting really great results. You need that data to be able to have some of those conversations. That is the truth of it. You can't just say, like, your gut instinct is built on the 20 plus years of experience you have, and all of that combines into strong gut experience and gut punches. Articulating those to your stakeholders is nigh on impossible. If they don't know who you are and you haven't got strong relationships with them, there's like, Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't matter that you've been hired to do that job and you know your shit. They don't know that you know your shit.
Yeah. And they don't know what we're trying to do either. They're not the people experts. I love that example you gave about the gym, because essentially what we're saying is you're putting in the same amount of effort, just more strategic, more deliberate. We're not asking you to do more. We're actually just asking you to be a bit more intentional with it.
Stopping doing stuff that's not getting you any results, really, and focusing on things that are going to genuinely, we don't have to, why is it our job? This is a bit of a rant, so I apologize, but why is it our job to upskill human beings on every single aspect of their lives? Like, you need to be better at communication. I think you can, as a human, go and figure that out for yourself if you're getting some feedback. That's not necessarily L&D's job to provide those experiences. We've decided to become a catch-all for every possible upskilling opportunity, and it's unnecessary, because really what we should be focusing on is helping the business move forward. And we don't need to offer everybody everything in order to do that. We need to focus on the things that are really going to help the business transform and engage and go where it wants to go. We don't need to offer everything. It's overwhelming anyways.
We don't have to be in charge of everything. We don't have to be in control.
There's no expectation that's the case. I think we've kind of, again, I've said it before, we've conflated volume with value. Yeah. And that's not a good place for us to be in. Just because we have lots of stuff doesn't mean anyone sees any value in it. Yeah.
Exactly.
You could happily cut out a significant chunk of your course library and no one would even notice.
No. And if they did, it would be because the search results are clearer and there's
it'd be a positive rather than a negative.
I think that is the perfect rant to finish up this episode on, because I think it's very clear how to diagnose a broken people impact loop. And it's quite clear what we need to do to change that around. But I think if anyone's listening and they are still thinking, okay, so where do I start? A great place to do that would be searching for the People Impact Loop on Google. And when you find our website, which does come up first, you will see a diagnostic tool on there. If you're feeling very, very perplexed about where to start and where your impact loop is falling short, that quick 3-minute diagnostic will just help you have that clarity. And it does come with a free 30-minute consultancy session with either Ash or myself, so we can talk through your unique issues. If you want to apply some of what we've been talking through today to your organisation, we can have that conversation and we can have that chat to help you go, okay, this is where we're falling short. So if you are still feeling like you're scratching your head a bit, that's probably a great place to go. I will, of course, put it in the show notes, but I've come to learn that a lot of you listen to us while driving, and you can't click on a link while driving because we are good drivers. Our listeners are good drivers and not going to do something like that. We'll
put it in the show notes anyways. So
of course we will.
Pull over safely and click on it right away. Yes.
I'm a bit pedantic about driving. But I've absolutely loved this. And as I said at the start of the podcast, we have some phenomenal guests lined up for this series. We've recorded most of the series already, which is lovely and organised for us. Who are we?
I know. That's all Hannah. I was off being poorly and stuff, so.
Yeah.
The royal way, take it, Han.
your moral support is always there, Ash.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
But we will be back next week with our first guest episode, and I'm joined by the wonderful Heather Burbright. We are going to be talking all things building trust, because that is such an important part of the People Impact Loop for all stages of it, not just with your learners or employees, but with your stakeholders and all that good stuff as well. So we will see you on the next episode of the Marketing for Learning podcast, guys.
Tatty buys. Oh my god, it was over an hour. Sorry about that, guys. I hope your ear holes are okay.
You can't say that, because if I edit it down now, it's going to look weird.
Shh, we'll put in some interesting promo stuff or something. I don't know.